So as a reminder, Sean Gates is back, and he is a financial advisor with Motley Fool Wealth Management, a sister company of the Motley Fool. And he's here to help us talk about breaking your money habits, how to be better with your money. And let me set the table. Here's what we're not going to talk about today. We're not going to talk about weird money-saving tips like crocheting pot holders and giving them out as Christmas gifts or using a lemon rind to clean everything in your house. This is about breaking bad habits so that in the long run, you will keep, save, retain a lot more money so you can put it to better use elsewhere. So to kick it off, let's talk a little bit about habits. So we're going to rely on Charles Duhigg to help us understand habits better. He wrote the book, The Power of Habit, Why We Do What We Do in Life and Business. And he breaks it down into 3 components, which are kind of like a cycle. So if you imagine a little circle with arrows going around, boop, 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 and it just starts all over again. Okay, so the first part of the cycle is the cue or the trigger. So that's the thing that triggers your habit. So, for example, if you're a smoker and you tend to smoke cigarettes on the ride home from work, then the cue is you're in your car and you're driving home from work. Oh, hey, that trigger is going to set off your routine, which is I smoke a cigarette. So you smoke the cigarette, and then as a result of smoking that cigarette, you feel a reward. The reward being, I'm unwinding, I'm having a cigarette, the day is over, good job, I punched my time card. And then it starts all over again. So next day, you're driving home from work, smoke a cigarette, feel the reward. Boom, 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 boom. So a lot of our habits, well, I guess Charles Duhigg would say all of our habits are driven by this cycle and process. So when we're talking about habits today, we're going to be looking at different ways you can kind of intervene and change your cue, your routine, and your reward so that you have better money outcomes. Yeah?
Sounds good to me.
And Sean, you actually read this book. Did I do a good job?
You did a great job. And I think I can help. So the reason that this cycle exists is to give you a framework to identify each step so that you can then make a positive change. So for me, example, a bad habit that I have is biting my fingernails. And the cue, which until I read this book, I didn't really understand how to target this. The cue is not something, most people think it's nervousness. You bite your nails when you're nervous. That's actually not what it is for me. I eat a lot, and when I'm hungry, just being able to chew on something is a satisfying experience. So the cue is I'm hungry, and then I'll just put my hands to my mouth and start going to town.
Just gnawing
on
on
those
yourself.
boys. Yeah.
Nom, 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 nom.
So that becomes the routine. So every time I'm hungry, if I don't have access to food, I'm down to basically bone and some skin.
Right. I wondered why you only have one finger left.
And then the reward is just that ability to chew on something. It's a similar experience to eating. And then it starts all over. So it was, until I read that, I didn't have an idea of what the cycle was. And it has helped. I actually do have, this is actually the best I've ever been with my fingernails in a long time.
Oh, they're looking good. Looking real good.
Looking good. So how does this relate to money?
Right, exactly. So what we're going to talk about today are different little tricks and hacks to help you kind of step in at the different points, cue, routine, and reward, and change your money. Most of these are going to be spending advice, but also advice on how to sock more money away, essentially.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think so.
All right, so let's start off with the cue. So again, the cue is that trigger that makes you do that undesirable habit in this case. So let's talk about spending. People do overspending, I think, is probably a pretty common one. What are some ways to keep yourself from overspending?
Well, clearly when you're spending, you're reaching into your wallet. I think the interesting thing when I think about this cycle, that cue, routine, reward, is that we often are wrong about what the reward is. For like the smoking, right? That's the quote unquote reward, although actually in the long term, that will kill you. It's not a great reward.
No.
So you reach for your wallet and you're going to spend something because you think it's going to, and you have to buy food and stuff, but it might be something you think that's going to provide a certain amount of pleasure, but it's really not. It's not the reward you're looking for.
It's an immediate pleasure.
Right, but it doesn't have any long-term reward. So one thing my wife and I did when we first got married is we put little cards in our wallet. So when we had to reach for our credit card, we had our goals listed there and had a different cue. So while we might have think we wanted to buy this one thing that would provide some temporary pleasure, we would then see actually why we would want to be more responsible, retirement, paying for education, things like that. And that changed it for us.
Yeah, and I think for me, one of the things that I do is the cue, just removing the situation for the cue. So if you go out into the city and you go into a store, then there are a bunch of cues all over the place on where you should spend your money.
I want that.
And so
Shiny.
if you just direct your attention to something else, like go play tennis or any other activity besides being surrounded by all of those cues, you can alter the actual cue itself.
And you also, as a kind of a little buffer for making that purchase, you also have kind of an imaginary conversation about the item.
Yeah, so I'll make a quick mental calculation and just say, I'm going to spend $50 on this pair of jeans. What else could I buy with $50 that might be more gratifying than a pair of jeans? And it doesn't necessarily, a pair of jeans is just an example. It could be anything, but that $50 could get you anything else you want that is far more gratifying, and you can identify the appropriate reward.
Right. Yeah, I think I saw this online as being called the stranger test, where basically it is, imagine someone comes up to you and says, would you like these pair of jeans or would you like $50? And you ask yourself, well, if a stranger made me that offer, what would I go with?
Yep.
I often think about in terms of if you want to spend $50, you had to earn more than that, right? You have to add basically a quarter or a third of that, because you had to earn $150, $125 first, then pay taxes to be able to spend $100. So when you think of how much time you had to take to earn that, was it worth it? Maybe for a pair of jeans, if you wear it a lot, it may not be the same if you're buying something that, I don't know, a video game, and you're only going to play 5 times, or you go out to eat and you enjoy it for that point, and then you don't enjoy it anymore, something like that.
Yeah, so that's kind of similar to my mom's little trick of finding out how many hours she would have had to work to afford that thing.
Right.
And that deters her from buying stuff too. Another one about buying clothes apparently is ask yourself, would I wear this out of the store? And if you wouldn't wear it out of the store, like put it on immediately and wear it, then you shouldn't buy it. I thought that was kind of a nice one. I don't know. You guys don't look like you spend a lot of money on clothes, so this is not resonating.
What are you saying about our wardrobes?
Hey, ladies, you know what I'm talking about.
Well, I think
because I do have an itch where I'll be like, I have to go to Marshall's this weekend at some point, and I have to just buy some new piece of clothing. It doesn't matter, and that's I would argue that's one of my bad habits.
And I think I'm not a great proxy for the clothes shopping, but I think if you think
no
about...
judging. Sorry, that laugh was a bit judgy sounding.
That's okay. I'm welcome it.
Tell me about your shaving habits again, and how you've used the same razor or haven't used the same razor for the last year.
And just use my newfound fingernails and just scrape it off.
Sorry, people out there, if you can't see what I see.
But if actually, this is one of those things where you could cue yourself differently. So when you have that itch to go shopping, if you created this interesting routine where you had to return an article of clothing that you might not wear as much anymore before you got a new thing, that extra step would be a different cue that might delay the purchase, and you'd rethink it and avoid it. So you could just create a rule for yourself where, hey, I'm going to go buy a new thing, but before I do, I have to return an old item or donate an old item, and you've changed your routine.
You make it annoying.
Yeah, you make it annoying.
Yeah.